Dude, I'm so stoked for this podcast.
Yeah, me too. I'm stoked, man.
I thought of a really good topic for today's podcast. It's going to be sick.
Okay, what's the topic?
Uh, what do you think?
What do I think about what?
What do you think about changing the education system in the US?
Yeah, but I mean, why? I mean, what's the point?
Dude, you totally don't even know what I was going to say.
I'm just saying, I mean, we have to do something about it.
Dude, what's wrong with you? We're going to do something about it, like, right now.
Hey guys, what's up?
Oh,
Hey, Audra.
hey, Audra, what's up?
You guys ready to do this podcast?
I'm really excited. I mean, about the podcast and also about changing the education system. But I mean, I'm not sure you should be, Audra.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see how it goes.
What's wrong?
You know what's wrong, Stephen? Is that
What is
this
it?
introduction was generated by an artificial intelligence.
No!
Oh my
It
goodness.
can't be!
It's mind blowing. But for
Incredible.
real, we are going to be talking about education. Yet
Indeed.
We
again.
will.
Welcome, everyone, to the podcast with a K. I'm not your host, Steven. I'm your co-host, or whatever.
Only if you insist.
And this is our host, slash co-host, slash K. Man with
I
the
am K.
He's the man with the K, Tristan. And we have a special guest here today.
We do.
Woo!
We have Audra. Welcome, Audra. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Are you ready to talk about education for real?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, today we're just going to kind of explore broad what is education, how can we change it, improve it, what is wrong, what's not working. Do you have any opening thoughts?
Yes,
Yes.
it's bad.
It's bad. Okay.
Uh-huh.
This is true.
There's a lot of things wrong, but
I think we all agree on that.
We definitely all agree on this. Now we have to decide what is bad, what is wrong with education.
what is
Mhm.
wrong? I think one big topic and the reason why education is so unsatisfactory is that it is one size fits all.
Absolutely.
It's just
Yeah.
to a group of 30 or even 100 people. Guy speaks, he teaches in his one way, and then it ends.
Yep.
Good luck.
hmm
I think this is problematic. What do you guys think?
I
I
agree.
agree.
It
Also-
yeah, go ahead.
Quick clarification. We're talking about public education, right? As in like the K through high school, right? Is that what we're talking
K
about?
through
Or are
high
we
school,
talking-
even college.
Okay.
When I'm talking about like speaking to 100 people, I'm talking to college.
That's what I figured, but that's why I wanted clarification, just to make sure.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
we can cover the whole spectrum because it is kind of the entire experience. Like we talk about like what's the purpose of education, right? Is it for preparing young people for the world? And if that's the case, then college makes sense to be included in my mind. Because you don't get everything you need from high school, and also we might discover that college isn't needed by everyone. So yeah, I think what were the exact words you said, Stephen? One size fits all. Yeah, one size fits
Yeah.
all is definitely an issue, and it's also the one size isn't just in that the content that is being broadcasted to people is one size fits all, but it's also like some surrounding context, like the duration of that content. So things are you have semesters or years for a class, and fixed intervals at which those things are being taught. And those also go into it. It's not just about the content on a single day that's being taught. It's about like how people's brains absorb that information over time. Because some people are going to learn faster in some subjects and others slower in those same subjects. So I think that's definitely an issue. That's definitely an area that could use some help. And I think online, a lot of companies are starting to get at this issue. Of course, not like um, colleges per se, but there are faculties out there.
Mhm. I just want to go back a little and sort
Mhm.
of contextualize the problem a little bit.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because whenever I think of education and like problems in those sorts of societal areas, I think, like, what's the historical precedent where these
Absolutely.
things come from, or were the problems then, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, like,
Mhm.
our model of education, at least college education, comes from way back when in like the history of academia, all the way back to the first academy, where smart people talked to a bunch of people who wanted to learn what they knew. So you got professors who profess what they know,
Mhm.
um, which worked sort of. We have gotten very far that way, and I don't think they have addressed the issue of one size fits all education um, anywhere near sufficiently. And I think maybe they didn't have the models they needed to understand the problem. Maybe they didn't have the social understanding we have now of how different people's minds work.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, they didn't solve it then, but I do think that we can solve it now.
Mm-hmm. I
We
Yeah.
also
have
don't think that I'll let
tools.
you go in just a second, but
Yeah,
I
go.
don't think that all of the issues stemmed from like those ancient Greek academias, you know? I think a lot of the issues stemmed from the early 1900s when we had this industrial revolution and factory workers churning out employees. So that became the grading mechanism that those factories would use to train people up, right? And then that kind of system was applied to the schooling system, and that hasn't really changed much at all since it was implemented. And that's where I think a lot of the issues of one size fits all begins.
Mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead, Audra.
Yeah, the thing that I was going to say was kind of going, I guess, in between kind of, the very ancient and more recent. I mean, it is still more recent. Only certain demographics, were allowed to get an education. And it used to be just white men and boys. And then, it slowly became more, accepted for women and girls to be educated, like, legally, officially. And then finally, segregation of schools by race was abolished.
Mm-hmm.
But something I've heard before, and I'm not going to say it exactly right, I don't think, but the idea is, that education is power, and that withholding education limits one's ability to be a fully functioning, fully participating member of society. So I think that, having developed the education system, for one specific demographic, and then start making allowances for other people to enter into that, but not necessarily changing it, could be a part of this. I haven't done any research on that specifically, like
Mm-hmm.
how the education models changed, since different people were allowed, to be educated legally and officially. But I do think that could play a part.
Mm-hmm. I
Definitely.
agree, and that brings up the issue of, obviously you're bringing up the issue of segregation and like diversity in educational contexts, which is it didn't stop in a way, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
you're very right.
One way in particular that keeps coming to mind is neurodivergent people,
Yes.
people who
Yes.
think differently. Um, they often think in ways that are just not conducive to a traditional classroom environment.
Mm-hmm.
A tutor might be better, but if the tutor is used to people who work well in a classroom environment, it's not going to work well. So
Yeah.
they work in their own way. And a lot of neurodivergent people often say that like the world, like society isn't like designed for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what part of what you said reminded me of that point, but
Mm-hmm.
the idea that education is power, and a lot of people struggle in the context that we are giving them to learn. So we are not
Yeah.
giving them the same amount of like social, economic mobility
Mm-hmm.
than we are other people.
Mm-hmm. And I would
It's
say that probably came to mind, or my thought is, because kind of what I was talking about were more like physical attributes, or things that people could like just clearly see, like that's visible. for different people who would be educated. But neurodivergence, you don't just see that. You know, that's you don't just look at someone and be like, okay, they're neurodivergent. That's So
Right.
I think
It's not
that
obvious.
that also probably is a reason why that's still something that really needs to be overcome today, or that's still a very big issue. In terms of, one size fits all. No, it doesn't. But it's not immediately visible to anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially in that case where it's like, people's brains just work so differently. Having a way to kind of facilitate or cater to individuals would address that issue. So, I mean, I guess one way you could kind of solve that problem is by having individual tutors for people, and then so you don't get stuck with a tutor who doesn't work well with you. Having some sort of system for being able to cycle who that is on some sort of basis. And maybe it's different for each person. Maybe it's like you have a tutor that you meet with one-on-one once a week. Maybe you meet with them every day. Maybe you meet with them once a month for a check-in. And that might just change based off of the individual because of how they learn. And then you could kind of filter, like, so you could have those close teaching moments. Then you could kind of have like with a small group, or you could have with like a bigger group, and those check-ins could help you figure out what balance would work for the individual. So those are just some ideas that are flowing through my mind. What do you think?
Can you restate the question? Or
Sure.
restate the...
So, like, re-summarize that, but just switch it down a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, the issue of catering to people who think in very different ways, right? I think one way that we can approach that is by allowing for kind of different contexts of learning, right? So with different numbers of people, either as peers or as like your main tutor, it could be one-on-one, it could be kind of lecture hall style, and then having that update over time, so it adapts to your ability to learn. So you'll have someone that you check in with and can be like, all right, is this working for you? And then kind of allowing that process to update. So the question is, what do you think of that? Are there other ways that we could cater to people individually? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Go ahead.
I also say I have 3 thoughts on it.
Okay.
One is like more shorter than others. But Steve, do you have like one idea specifically, or?
I was just going to boil down the concept to we want to supply a dynamic learning experience
Yeah.
in whatever system we come up with, and in whatever way we change the education system. It needs to be dynamic. That's the main.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Definitely.
main problem at stake.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Audra?
Yeah. Things I was going to say were, first, I think there may be a better word than cater. Not that it's like, bad to use that, but I'm just thinking about the context of language and support people who are more neurodivergent or need different contexts of learning.
To clarify,
Yeah.
I mean cater to everyone, not specifically to neurodivergence. I'm talking across the board, right? So any individual difference across people, right? I'm not trying to separate any sort of groups. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that, so I just wanted to, yeah. And the other things were, I think it's a good idea. I don't know how like practical and like how, how much we're trying to go there specifically right now with our discussion. I think that's an ideal for sure. I think another potential possibility would be like allowing students to switch classes with different teachers, because different teachers or professors, they will teach in different ways, the same content, but one student might need a certain thing explained differently to them, or they might do better with a different teaching style. So I think like having that flexibility to like switch if one person isn't working for you, I think that would be something really beneficial.
I agree. I do see a little sort of, it's a subtopic almost, talking about teachers.
Yeah.
Because if we were to implement that right now, you can just switch teachers. Like some teachers are going to have 0 students.
I was just
True.
gonna say that.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
bad at teaching.
Yes.
They're really, really bad. And a lot of them know it.
So basically, what you're saying is we need to improve our education system for teachers who are.
Yes.
who are-
Here we
who are
go.
being
Here we go.
educated.
Listen to this.
That too.
We need to
Maybe,
improve our education systems for people who want to be teachers.
maybe, just maybe, teachers should learn how to teach while they're teaching.
Oh.
No.
Oh.
What?
Whoa. What a
Like, think about
revolutionary
this.
concept.
Think about this. High school teachers, elementary school teachers have to go through education to learn how to teach. If you're
Yeah.
teaching in college, you don't have to. You could just have to get your degree, and then they assume that you can teach your subject, and like you teach it in master's programs. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I talked to some of
I
my
hadn't thought about that
professors,
before.
like, and I was like, "Where did you learn to teach?" And he was like, "Actually, I didn't." And I was like, "Oh,
Actually, I didn't.
okay."
Yeah, this is the problem. If we're talking about, well, high schoolers, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about colleges, there's so many teachers who they just want to do their research.
Yeah.
But they get
Yes.
the privilege of doing their research by teaching the class.
Yeah.
So they're forced into it. And
Mhm.
they can be really bad at teaching. They can fully be aware that they're bad at teaching. But it's just like too bad. That's just how the college system works.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. I also don't know about this. Like in terms of, elementary, middle, high school, when people are going through their program, to learn how to be a teacher. I know my roommate's actually an education major, so English major education program, but she has to go through like a practicum, and she has these requirements for certain amounts of like experience in a classroom, and being with other teachers and other students and things like that. So like
Experience.
I'm wondering how we could implement, like how that could be a thing for college professors people who want to be college professors and or do research. Like I feel like there should be some kind of like orientation or training or something, and being like, hey, you can't do your research at the expense of these students who are learning the stuff they're supposed to be knowing for their classes, to continue on in college, to that they're going to use these skills they're going to use beyond. Like I feel like that could
Totally agree. And it's difficult because like the teachers who aren't very good at their jobs, that's because it's not their interest.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a big part of their career, but they just don't want to. It's not their passion. And forcing them to learn a bit about how to teach beforehand, I think it'd be helpful, but I still feel like we're not solving a fundamental problem of just who we're picking to be our teachers.
Yeah. Something else that's kind of like that's just like central or like overarching issue, I think, is what are we focusing on as what do we want the people who are in education systems right now, these kids and these college students and everything, what is the goal? Like what do we want them to get out of this? How do we want what do we want them to go moving forward into life, like just continuing as a student, I guess, if you're younger, and then as a college student moving out into the world as an adult, what kind of things do we want them to come out with? What kind of things, what kind of tools can we give them to impact the world in better ways? And I think that goes hand in hand, I think, with, how can we pick people to be better teachers? Because I think you have to kind of know what the goal is going in. And
I agree.
kind of making yourself a better person in a way, but we can get into that.
Sure. So I feel like we've kind of started. So I guess there's a couple areas that we've gone into. All right. So we started with, then my brain decides to blank.
One size fits all.
Yes, one size fits all. So we started with the content of education and how that's transferred to the student, right? Then we went to the teachers, and kind of what they're doing, their purpose, how they can be trained. And now we're getting to kind of this question of what is the purpose? Like, what is the end goal? What are we actually trying to teach? And I think that's a wonderful question and not an easy one to suss out.
No, it's not.
Because
Not at all.
like you want like a broad education, but you also want the ability for narrow aspects of it. And deciding what the broad education is very difficult because it's like, what should everyone know? Should everyone know a certain set of things? That's a weird concept.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think one thing that could help in like a lot of people that I've met have no idea what they want to do after high school, and their parents help them decide what to do, or maybe they're lucky and they actually find something that they enjoy, and that's what they decide to study. And others, they start getting their degree in something and then halfway change it and change it again. So maybe one thing that could be done is in earlier in education, maybe in middle school or high school, is to have a class or a program that showcases a bunch of different occupations and what is involved in them, and then shows kind of what the education is required for those occupations. Um,
Yes.
and if that's just kind of something that's going alongside of all of the classes, like that is a class. It's like what are your options, you know? And then like maybe actually getting to see like through field trips what they do, or inviting people in and having them talk about it, just to get young minds interested in different areas of life, so they can start to narrow in. I think that would be one way to really help that.
I think that'd be massively
Absolutely.
beneficial. That'd be far better than the nothing that we have today.
Yeah.
Honestly, you describing
Yeah.
that, it's amazing to me that that doesn't already exist everywhere.
Honestly, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's something you mentioned, I think, in the first podcast I watched from you guys. I think the careers, vocation, all of that stuff. When Christian, I do remember you talking about something kind of similar to that, or like some kind of program or app or something. But I do think, as far as it being in schools, I absolutely think so.
Hmm.
Like that would be so beneficial, and like also helping is to think about, there is a life after school, because you can get so caught up in, this is just my daily life. We're just doing school, just doing homework, live my
Yeah,
life, and then
very
like
true.
you're expected to like suddenly figure out what you want to do with everything else that's ahead of you, and whatever that is, and it's really jarring, and it's not something you really want to think about, or like if you haven't been exposed to it before and gotten used to the idea of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, like, when you think of a field that you want, when you think of what you want to be when you're a kid, none of what you say is going to match up with what somebody's actually doing day to day in a job in that field.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have any idea of what it actually involves. You have
Realistic
this.
expectations, yeah.
Sorry, go on. What were you
No,
saying?
sorry, I was talking over you. Go ahead.
Oh, like you have, like, people explain this to you in like basic ideas of what people do when you're a kid, but you don't actually know. You're right.
You really don't. And I think that's a great idea to make them aware of what it's really like. First off, to let these kids, and maybe not kids necessarily, but at least teens, be realistic about
Yes.
what they might do in the future. Like the real
Yeah.
world, the life after college doesn't have to be, so horrifying. You can have real concrete things that it's like, yeah, you can do this,
Hmm.
you can do
Absolutely.
this, and you can also have a life. Believe it or
You can
not.
have a life. Yeah.
Realistic expectations, right?
Yeah.
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 I think that's
sure.
one that I kind of want to bring it back to how we wanted to come up with, what do we want to actually teach people? What do we
Yes.
want the people who go through the education system, the whole thing, to come out having? What skills, what knowledge? I wrote down two things, but I wanted to get your thoughts. One is specialization, which we've kind of talked about already. Like, simply, what do you want to go into? What is going to make you valuable in the market, in the capitalist market?
Or what do you value personally?
What do you value personally? Yeah. And what can support you in real life? And second is, how do we give this person, this student, a healthy mind?
Yes.
And the skills to ensure that they can take care of their mind and body. I feel like a lot of education in the past in other cultures, we discredit things like, old forms of education sometimes, but people thousands of years ago were really smart. Like they invented the beginnings of our mathematics system, which isn't easy when you have no precedent.
True.
So, like, Egyptians have all these ideas on how to keep your body healthy. Indians, Native Americans, have all these ideas on how to keep your mind and body healthy. Indians, they have all these ideas, and it's ingrained in culture in a lot of countries. But the education system in our country should, on a philosophical level, you have 20 years to teach a person how to live and how to survive and make money. It shouldn't just be here's how to make money.
Mhm.
Yes.
It should be how to live a good life.
Yes.
Give them skills.
I
Give them actual
wholeheartedly
useful
agree with
skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only thing I feel like I left off that list was like a basic education, like, that baseline of like, yeah, you'll get geometry, you'll get a bit of history, that
So
kind of thing.
I think I don't know if this is kind of splitting up what you already have, but I might put it into 4 categories. So your specialization, your health, can kind of summarize mental, physical health into one. The generalization, and then I would put like general life skills as a separate thing. Just like
Yeah.
world
good
life
idea, yeah.
skills, right? Like how do you interface with society? Right? How do you get a job? How do you pay your bills? What are all these little nitty gritty things that people don't normally think of?
How do you do your dishes efficiently?
Yeah. How do you
Yeah.
manage relationships? How do you talk to people how do you talk to strangers, Things
I
like
feel
that.
like that. I feel like that kind of like life skills could be divided into 2 different categories. One, those like you were saying, practical skills, like how do you do your dishes, etc. Those could be in one category, and then more of the softer kind of like unseen skills of managing relationships and I don't know, managing time, stuff
Conflict
like that.
resolution. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly, things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. I guess that does kind of blend with health a little bit, like with kind of the emotional relational health. But yeah, I think that's a good distinction to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of historical context for this kind of thinking of expanding the range of education, because I think education in this country is so limited in scope. Really, it takes so long, but yet it's so limited in scope. It's kind of strange, and I think it's part of just the philosophy that has developed over time. Like Christian, to your point, from the Industrial Revolution, I think that whole philosophy of just churning people out that can just do a job is still really pervasive, at least under the surface. And
Yep.
Oh yeah.
that's a philosophy. That's like a specific philosophy. But there's so many philosophies around the world and throughout history that have been very beneficial to people in many different ways. I think we could learn a lot from like Zen teachings from the East, Confucius, Taoism, aspects of like Hinduism has this whole health system called Ayurveda, which, look it up, you can think of it what you will, but nonetheless, it's helped a lot of people. And it not only talks about, taking care of the mind, but it translates that into it doesn't only talk about taking care of the body, it translates that into taking care of the mind. The point is it's holistic. We don't live in bubbles. It's not like we just flip a switch and we're in work mode half the day.
Exactly.
We're human beings all the time.
Yep. And there's neuroscience behind all of this, and yet it's not like
so.
applied to actual like what we're taught in schools at a young age.
Yeah, I think like kind of circling back to what you were saying just a minute ago, Stephen. Like we have this very workaholic culture in the U.S. We are very individualistic, very high on I'm gonna do what I want to do because I want to do it. Basically, there's this whole philosophy of kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can make it if you try hard enough, and all these things. And something else that I kind of wanted to come back to that I was thinking of a few minutes ago was, you're asked when you're little, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's kind of like left alone after, you give some kind of answer. And then then you're started, to be asked that again in high school. And you're like, well, I haven't thought about it since first grade or whatever it was somebody asked me. And like, I definitely think that having, kind of what we already talked about, that just a kind of a holistic program of different things, different, teaching about different careers, having people come in and talk about them. And something else that I hadn't really mentioned, but we kind of touched on already a little bit with, mental and emotional health of, ingraining it in people and kids that they can achieve things, because like not in the sense of, oh, you can do it, just work harder and you can do it, but like in the sense of, you have value and you have capabilities. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of more specifics to say, but like, people have worth, they have inherent value, and believing that can really help can help someone think, okay, there is a spot for me. I can find a place or a field that I can work in or be in, and I'm not completely incompetent. Like, I have skills and things I can bring to the table, because I feel like it's so expected that you already have that mindset going into this kind of stuff. Like, it's expected, like, okay, cool, you have marketable, worthy skills, but then, there's kind of always the fear of like, what if I don't,
Yeah.
And I mean, I would assume that, a lot of people struggle with that. I don't think it's rare whatsoever.
I agree. Our mutual friend, I guess I won't say his name, but he.
Oh,
our
dang.
call ends in 10 minutes. Free group calls have a limit of 1 hour.
What?
Ain't that good to know?
Cool.
Well,
Okay.
then.
Well,
Well, you've gone longer for an hour before,
Well,
right?
there's only 2 people. I guess they have a
Darn.
policy. Interesting.
Wow.
I exceeded the limit.
Google,
Well,
you're not giving this to us for free anymore?
What?
What?
Man, we're gonna have to switch to Comic Sans' system.
Seriously,
Oh, really?
soon enough.
I guess. Anyways,
I guess
hold
so.
on.
We've been
Stephen,
avoiding
continue
it,
your
but-
thought while we have 10 minutes
Okay, where was
Yeah.
I?
before we switch it up.
Yeah.
Where was I?
Think you're freezing. Okay, there we go. We're good. Mutual friend, something that...
Mutual friend, yes.
Mutual friend, right. Our mutual friend, he has certain things that make it difficult for him to learn from a normal class, It's just diversity of thought. It's diversity of how his brain works. And that makes it hard for him. He did not believe in the slightest that he could learn how to code. He just thought he was gonna flunk out, wasn't gonna happen, wasn't gonna work. He's done. He didn't know what he was gonna do with his life. Until a friend showed him that he could learn and he could write code. And he was really good at it, and he loves it now. So absolutely, to your point, Audra, giving everyone, I was gonna say kids, but everyone, the encouragement that they can find something and they can get good at something and they can bring real value to the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And understand that, and kind of expanding a little bit more, that there doesn't have to be a specific rush to do this, because you also talk about this in your vocations careers video. That PodKASt. What am I saying? Gosh. I think Stephen, you specifically brought this up. Society rushes us to get through college. Find the thing. You just got to get through college. It costs money to be there, and all this stuff. And I can't remember all the details of what you said, but there's this whole idea of just rushing through, and I think that can also put pressure and kind of a burden on people, because you're like, well, then I haven't found my thing yet. My time's up. I don't know what to do. But like letting someone, holistically explore these ideas and having that foundation for, you can, there is something. You have to, one, keep having hope that there's that, and two, just kind of have the opportunity in this space, really, to figure that out.
Yes.
Without outside pressure saying you have to do this.
And I think that classes on different fields being strewn about like the entire educational experience through all the years, having that constant reminder of like, there are real jobs out there. which one seems interesting to me. That, along with education on maintaining mental health and being able to learn about yourself effectively and understand yourself, know how you work, know how you learn, all this stuff. I think the panic that people have of trying to find the right job, the right vocation, and just like chug through college is in such antithesis to actually like thriving instead of just surviving.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's like our education.
Industrial revolution.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Everyone is like the philosophy is survival.
Gosh.
And it
When we
doesn't
have,
Instead of thriving.
it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
and it doesn't
Yeah.
help that like the question you always get asked is, what are you going to do after high school? Where are you going to go to college, right? And then it's like,
Right.
what are you going to do for a job? It's like that's the question that keeps coming. And if education's
Always.
focus isn't on you have one thing that you're trying to find, it's like we're going to prepare you for life, which is more than just one job, one career, right? It's like
Absolutely.
how do you learn to navigate life, right?
Mhm.
Then you don't have that problem of like there's no issue of feeling that you don't have the right thing, that you can't find the right thing, because you just know that it's an experience. Life is an experience that you're going to go through, and it's going to change, and you're going to change, and there's not always you're not going to find the thing right away, and it takes exploration to do so.
Here's the
Yes.
here's the thing about what you just said. How many teens and kids and like freshmen in college um, like have not thought about that kind of thing, have not thought about um, the bigger picture of life outside
Mm.
of the narrow philosophy of I need to get a job, I need to get a vocation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They haven't considered the fact that there are other ways of living that are
Mhm.
acceptable. And I think that's what I one thing I picked up from what you said, which was even if you don't end up finding a specific thing, if our education system can supply you with life skills and the ability to take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically, even if you're working as a janitor somewhere, like it's okay.
Yep.
Like it's
Yeah.
gonna be all right. You can still you're gonna
Yeah.
have friends, and you're gonna make your way. You're gonna make your own way.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's such a philosophy of, making it to the next level all the time, constantly pushing yourself. Some people are going to be happy just doing that. Some people are going to be happy, not having a super high position in a company or something. I'm not thinking of good examples.
That's right.
You don't have to have the best job or necessarily even like, I guess, well, really what I'm saying is to want that. As long as you can sustain yourself, you know that you can do that. You have confidence in yourself that you can do that, and you have the skills. Then why not like thrive, expand your
Yep.
life, socially, and in a sense of building yourself emotionally, mentally, and all that stuff. Like I think we have that view of you have to have your vision up, as high as it can go.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
else you're not achieving like your full potential. No, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's something to be said for that, but yeah.
No, definitely. There
Yeah.
was something I saw recently from a YouTuber that I watched that said, um, basically, it was there is someone in the world right now who would absolutely die to have your life in
Yep.
particular, all of the things that are going on in your life, and you
Interesting.
would absolutely die to have someone else's life, right? It doesn't matter who you are, right? There is a specific person out there you're like, I would want all of the aspects of your life. And that's true of everyone, right? And if you're always focusing on the person you want to be and not the person who wants to be you, then you can't really like appreciate what you have, right? Because you're always like, I could have
Good
that, I
point.
could have that, and not like, oh, I have these things that other people don't that they want. And it goes both ways. Like, people who are celebrities want to have the small life because they're bombarded by all
Yeah.
these things, and people who have the small
Mhm.
life want to be popular. It goes both ways. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, not I guess just like having those kinds of mindsets, it just is really eye opening to how you approach life. Like, there isn't like a best thing for you. You're just living the life that you're living, and there are things you want, and there's things that other people want, and just coming to appreciate that, I think, is really cool.
Quick interjection here.
Mhm.
I still have more thoughts, but with the whole 10 minutes coming up soon, ending soon probably, what's the plan for moving? We're going to end this and start a new stream. What are we thinking?
I think I will just let me just start another meets, and then we will
If that works.
transition there.
Okay, sounds good.
And hopefully nobody is okay, I think that works. All right, I'll just send it to you all. Just switch to this one, and we should have a whole other hour to go.
Am I here?
You are here. Welcome to here.
It's nice to see you, Christian.
It's nice to see you, Stephen. We have transitioned to a new space.
Wow. I feel different.
Well, it's because you're on the left now.
Oh my gosh.
We have cycled. You've traded places.
You guys are still in exactly the same positions to me as you were
really?
before, but yeah.
Actually, you two have switched for me.
Okay, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Client side. All right, yeah. So we're good for another hour.
Alright.
Presumably. Yes,
Okay.
what
Where
were
we?
the
My
thoughts
goodness.
you wanted to bring up?
I had a few thoughts. Steven, if you have any thoughts, you could jump in.
Go ahead.
Okay. The things that I had, kind of branching out from that, I really think that gratitude and being able to see the value in your life and what you have is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Two other things that I was thinking of, they're kind of unrelated to those. That specifically, the two thoughts that I was thinking of are the value of lifelong learning and how I don't think that school really the education system as it is right now doesn't really support that, or like a lot of people, or well, I don't actually know. I'm thinking about when I'm when I'm setting aside whatever, like I often want to get deeper into it and explore more and think about memorize things better, and et cetera. But the class I'm in usually moves pretty fast. I don't have time for that. I only have time to memorize what's supposed to be on the test, what I need to know for writing the paper, and then I'm off again. It's just that's all. So I don't know I think that could be something implemented into the ideal system of being able to better support that and less about memorizing random facts for things on tests.
Yeah.
And while also supporting, there are some skills that you should have over your life that you need to know, like kind of like the backbone of what we've been talking about this whole time that we need. So that, and like something that my sister and I have talked about before is like, something that we're looking forward to with retirement, hopefully, is being able to learn all the stuff we want whenever we want. Honestly,
Sure.
that sounds super exciting to me.
If you get the right job, you can do it earlier.
Yeah, it's true.
True.
But I think supporting that, students exploring different things and processing it more. That kind of also goes back to the whole one size fits all, not everyone's going to process everything the same way. Sometimes there are better ways for different people, etc. And the other thing that I was thinking of, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the life skills, specifically relationally. Some students are coming from places they can't leave at the moment. Whether that's a really tough family life or like, I don't know, some students are homeless. There are some students who don't have the basic things that they need to live, as in meeting their physical needs and everything. And I absolutely think there needs to be support for people in those situations, and like especially because when you're with your family, you can't, until you're a certain age, you can't really escape or leave that if you need to, and sometimes it's not even possible to do so until later than you're legally allowed. So I think the education system should have a better way of supporting that, reaching out to students who have that kind of who have those kind of problems going on. And this connecting to so many things. Also the teachers too. we need teachers who know how to support students with that more than just reporting it to some higher up authority or
Yep.
something.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
almost like there should be it'd be very beneficial to have like psychologists, coaches, people who psychiatrists,
Yeah.
like have that incorporated into it with, again, some interval of a check-in with people, help people, and that's can be part of the education system instead of like um, I guess separating it out into like the healthcare system, and it's like, oh, you have to go out to them instead. If it's part of their education system, then it's like you just get it as a benefit
Yeah.
for doing education. And I also think on the topic of lifelong learning, um, I think my ideal education system would basically incorporate that. I don't know if I've explained this on the podcast yet, but the ideas that I'm starting to put together for the ideal education system in my mind involves a corporation that is the education entity instead of a university or a school, right? So this corporation, it works just like any other corporation. It has products, it has employees, it has people, it has stakeholders, and they're all working for the common goal of the corporation. And the corporation would presumably be large enough that it utilizes multiple domains, right? So maybe it starts out as like a tech company. So you're going to have your tech people, you're going to have your programmers, you're also going to have your artists and your the creative side of things to promote that product, whatever product they're creating. And then research and development and statistics and financial, like it's all packaged into a corporation. And there might be some fields that might not fall into it, but then maybe another educational corporation could have them. But the idea is, right, if it's a corporation, that they're going to want to keep their people for as long as possible. So there's always an opportunity for you to go up, right? And I think what would make it very useful is, this is a very practical thing. It's a corporation. You're learning how to work in a corporate environment, but it's also an educational institution. So you start out learning, and you're mostly learning, and then you start getting tasks to work on things. And then you transition more to that, but you should always be learning. And I think there can even be like an aspect of peers teaching peers, and then people who know more teaching people who don't know as much. So it sounds a lot less structured when I say it that way, but I'm sure there are ways that it could become more structured, such that it incorporates that lifelong learning. So you're learning and you're growing in this company into a position, a role in this company, and there's still opportunities to kind of diverge within that company. But yes, that's a brief introduction of some of the ideas I have there.
That is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yes, there is, and we don't need to do that all right now.
we might want to unpack that on another podcast.
Yeah.
With a K.
Indeed.
And an A and an S.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I don't know if you can still hear me, but my Wi-Fi is like weirding out, so it says that it's trying to reconnect.
We can hear you. Yeah, your video is cutting out a little bit for me, but
okay. Mm-hmm.
We can hear you.
Okay. Looks like yes. Okay, cool. It's mostly reloaded. Yes, there we are. Everyone's here now.
Nice.
Okay.
Sweet.
What you were saying, Christian, about bringing in people. They're starting off just learning. They're learning,
mm-hmm.
and then they're starting to do more things. Like I don't know if you specifically said teaching, but like
yep.
I can't remember honestly because sorry.
Yeah, it's
okay. And but they're still learning. That reminds me a lot of the place where I work at my school, actually, which
mm-hmm.
is basically, like this center for students who work there. They help other students who come in with any digital projects or like assignments they have, or if they just want to learn about a new thing. So like when I started off working there, basically all my time there was spent learning.
Mm-hmm.
Learning some of the basics of what we do, shadowing other people who would be teaching the students, stuff like that, learning the actual tools that I would be teaching someone. And then I started gradually working up to where I would, have an appointment with someone. Like I'd have like a meeting with them and teach them how to think. And then, so that's like a lot of what I do at this point. Like I've learned enough to be able to really help most of the, like a lot of the students come in for most things probably. And there are definitely still things I'm learning. Like, I'm starting new projects, and meeting with supervisors and stuff like that. People who already, who know what I need to be doing, or who know what I could learn next, basically. And so I'm still continually learning while also teaching. And so that model just reminded me of my experience.
That's really cool. Yeah. I wish more things had that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a seed of something there, of that cycle of learning, teaching, and doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like given another hour, we could really extrapolate out into, if we could incorporate that as like a somewhat core part of an education system. I think that'd be pretty great.
That would be pretty cool. Another thing that I thought of was in one of my classes right now is about small group communication. So we literally just watched a video last week about this company that they like invent and design like a whole bunch of products for people. And so the groups that they have, like a lot of the time, in a corporate world structures, there's a hierarchy of, the employees and people who might be above them, and then the manager, the whole thing. In this situation, there was kind of a manager leader, but he was more in like a facilitator kind of mode. Like he wasn't, the one saying, okay, this is exactly what we need to do right now, guiding everything. There were a whole bunch of employees from different backgrounds, different, jobs and stuff. Like there was a biologist, like an engineer, psychologist, all these people who were working. I don't remember what the thing that they were that they were designing. I don't remember what that was, but the whole idea was they were all working together collectively, bring their different skill sets and everything to the table, and and there wasn't one person who was saying, this is the way it's going to be. Exactly. Like they kind of came up with everything together and added in their specific ideas. It's kind of going off the track of education a little bit, but just kind of a method of working with others that
I don't think it's off the track.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like especially with the idea of actually doing work while in education, like working together with people like that. Problems are so vague in the real world. They're really they're hard. They're not
structured problems.
Yeah, they're really not clear cut. So you have to learn to get used to it first, and then just work with what you have and trust your team. It's a bunch of different skills that you get a little bit in college, but mostly you just get angry at group work in college. It's not always constructive.
Which is why this class I'm taking was specifically designed to combat that.
Nice.
That's great.
It's a very cool class. Yeah.
I think a lot of classes ought to be like that. That's very practical.
Yeah, I think that this kind of class should be something that people are required to take. Okay, like there are some this goes back to specific classes in like coursework and the content of education. I think there should be some classes, like some gen eds, basically, specifically for colleges, that people should take that would be centered, and I guess this is more just the practical aspect of like some of those, that backbone of what we want to have in education. Just skills that would just be good going forward. Like this small group communication class. There are so many times in your life where you're going to have to work with other people and like do conflict resolution and get to know other people in a context, enough so you can get to work and do something. I'm trying to think of other ones. Like some of the gen eds that people need you don't really need that. They're just like a lot of gen eds or prerequisites to certain courses that you just don't need. Yeah.
Wasting hours of your time.
Yeah, there's a friend, this might be the same friend who you mentioned earlier, Stephen, who is taking college classes right now, but he's having to slog through all these math courses because they're required before he can get to the courses that he really wants to, or that would be beneficial for his career. And it's not helping him any, and it's just, it is a waste of his time. He's not going to use that stuff in the future, really. I mean, as far as he knows, and so and like that's just to get to the courses that he wants that would be beneficial for him after, during and after he learns the stuff. So yeah.
There is a lot of empty space in education. And I was thinking, we have all these ideas for things to add to education. How do we fit it in? I don't think we'd really have that much trouble fitting it in.
No.
If we take out the things that people don't really need.
Cut out the fat first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll have space.
Yeah, because the thing is, you gotta have a balance of give and take. 'Cause you can't just add all these things and without taking out all the things that are unnecessary or that cause issues or whatever.
Yeah.
You gotta.
It's not that you're taking them out; it's that you're not making them requirements, right? People are going to want to explore those things, right?
Yeah,
so those can be explored still, but they're just not required.
Yeah, a lot of things don't need to be required. I think a base level of education is important, but if we are like assisting kids throughout their education in learning about opportunities, they don't necessarily need to go into a bunch of specialized knowledge about every field in order to figure out whether or not they like it. Because that's not even telling them whether they like it or not. That's not real life. So
it's just teaching them if they like the content of the course, really.
That's true. And a lot of times they don't, even though they could if it was taught properly.
Yeah.
So there's no... I think we've come to a consensus here that...
Okay.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to say before we decide what we're doing next. And that is, I think that... there's a lot of issues with elitism and like the school board being this kind of big thing off in the sky, and then what's actually happening between the teachers, professors, and the students and the pupils, right? And I think that that gap needs to be shrunk to zero, and that anybody who is in the faculty or the school board or the president position of this educational institution should be a student as well and a teacher, right? They need to see the system from the bottom up, so that they know what's going on at the lowest level and they're not relying on people reporting up.
100%.
So I think that needs to be incorporated as well.
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. If you're who do you think is going to be able to see the needs and how company functions on a day-to-day basis better? Like, the highest, like the CEO or the janitor, and like it's kind of that sort of thing where like someone who's there all the time working at the baseline level, who isn't necessarily even noticed. They're going to see the inner workings and see how everything actually actively plays out. Whereas the CEO doesn't about like all the little details going on and all the drama or like any of the how things are falling apart.
The pain points, yeah,
exactly. So, yeah.
It's like I really, it's crazy. We need to move on to the next our next segment.
It is such a good topic.
Let me finish this off with a little intellectual pull from one of the few books I've read in my life, Walden 2. Walden 2 is about this paradisical. It's
no, not parasitic. Paradise. What do you?
Paradise.
It's a small scale society that's meant to be like a paradise.
Okay.
It's a very fascinating read, but it's just so fascinating to me that if you go down in the hallways of schools, you're going to hear complaints everywhere. Everyone's so many people are complaining about everything, about the classes they hate, about the teachers that are bad, about bullying and things. That's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
I just feel like it is absolutely possible to have school not be something so often hated.
Yes, please.
It can be different. Let it be different.
Yep.
Yes, it can be different. And
let's.
Okay, one tiny.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it's a good thought. Just this mention. I was homeschooled for the people who are watching this who don't know me. And something that was kind of interesting to me when I came to college was one time one of my classes got canceled, and someone like one of my friends or something said to me, "Oh, yay, that's awesome." That's I don't remember exactly the context, but it was like a very positive. Yeah, your class was canceled. That's awesome. And like in the back of my head, I'm thinking, no, that's really sad. I really wanted to go to that class today. I was looking forward to it, and like just because like that's sounds kind of what I was used to with homeschooling, or like at least I didn't usually. There were some things that I totally despised, but like a lot of things, I was like I actually kind of looked forward to learning that, or like in the classes in college that I got to pick, that I get to pick that aren't necessarily like gen eds that I have to slog through, or even gen eds that I actually like. I like being there, and I feel like we need to kind of have that value on education, have people liking it, and that's how we need a difference. And yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone should want to be there.
That would be the biggest reform of them all.
You're not wrong.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. All right. Now we must decide. Are we going on to the lowercase r, or how are we time-wise for everyone?
It's your world. It's 9:50.
Oh, wow. We've been talking for a very long time.
We have.
Yes.
We have.
Recordings has us at an hour and 1 minute right now.
Chugging. Okay. Well, let me. I would like to. I would like to get into our worlds because we have 3 people this time, so we have to take time. But let me just say a quick prayer to Comic Sans.
Oh yes.
To appease them and their multidimensional holiness.
Because we can't forget, they're our sponsor. So.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
It would just be sacrilege to.
It would, and like we're using Google Hangout, like Meets, whatever.
Google Meets.
Man, they're gonna rail on us. Like we could be using their software, but it's not great, guys. Like all the fonts, like it would change Steven's shirt, and his shirt has a good font on it.
Oh, you're so right.
It would change it right to Comic Sans, everything.
It would ruin the the extra. I don't know what to say. I was about to say spiciness of it, but that's not the right word for it.
Yes.
Even our words, even the words we speak would be in Comic Sans.
Oh, they translate to Comic Sans.
They translate it straight to Comic Sans, yeah. They take no prisoners seriously.
Yeah.
What we mean to say, Comic Sans, is that we appreciate you. There's never a day where we are not thinking about you every second of our lives. We appreciate your sponsorship of this podcast. We would not and would have never existed if you didn't sponsor us, and we would never exist if you stopped sponsoring us. So please continue sponsoring us. Thank you. Merch is in the description for Comic Sans.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Just make sure you're broadcasting that outside of our universe and not within.
It's out there.
Okay, cool. Don't want the negative workers to start hearing these words. Cool.
Shh, don't even mention them.
Okay. No. All right. Well, with that little rendezvous, if that's not the right word. Pit stop.
Sure, I don't know.
Pit stop. We have to pit stop.
Why don't we make our way on to probably one of the best segments of the podcast? Okay, maybe second best, because Real Talk with a capital R is pretty good, especially this time.
It's pretty lit.
Yeah.
And that would be, what's your world?
Mm-hmm. I guess we have that question. Just telling you this. So, what's your world?
It is the question. We also have the question: is who goes first? Shall we have our guest go first?
Oh my goodness!
Could we do it maybe sandwich style? Sandwich style sounds weird to say, but sandwich style in the sense of.
Oh, you want to go?
You guys go first,
okay.
Then me, the irregular person, and then another predictable.
Sure.
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah.
Christian.
Yes.
Christian.
Guess a color.
Okay.
Between yellow and blue.
Shouldn't I be the one asking you, like, if you're trying to decide who's going first?
Between yellow and blue?
Yes.
There's not teal is probably somewhere in there.
Okay, you're going first.
Teal's closer to blue than yellow.
All right, I'm going first. Does that mean I'm asking first?
was purely random, believe me.
I could ask.
That's a good
Go ahead.
Yeah, Audra, why don't you ask?
Okay, sure. I was just trying to think about like the rotation of who's asking him. So, Christian,
Yes.
what's your world?
What a wonderful question, Audra. Now, you see, I haven't given this world any thought. And in fact, that is a key component of my world. It is thoughtless. There are entities in this world, but they don't think thoughts. Instead, they think actions. So we've got a bunch of little entities, and they have like giant blue bulbous heads, kind of looking like light bulbs, with something spindly inside, and really really short arms and really really short legs. All right, and they're just kind of waddling around, and they have no thoughts, and they have a couple actions though. So they can waddle. They can their heads can turn into static, and they can zap one another. They can also float like helium, so that's another action they can take. And they can kind of screw themselves like a light bulb into the mercurial surface of their world. And yeah, so they don't think, they just kind of do one of those actions. And nobody really knows which action they do. But there is another creature in this world, and this creature is a red kind of creature that looks kind of like a stork, I guess. And so it's tall, long legs, and it's got this long craning neck and big wings, right? But it's a spindly creature. And this creature does have thoughts, and it is very lonely because there's only one of this creature. Actually, there's two of this creature, and they're kind of on polar opposites of the planet. And as they walk in the same opposite direction around the planet. But there's a sea of these little blue light bulb creatures. And the stork creature will utilize the little creatures. That's where it gets kind of all of its energy, right? So it gets energized by the zaps, and it also just has a fun time kicking them around like they're soccer balls. And since they don't have thoughts, they can't think otherwise. And they don't have judgments because they don't have thoughts, and judgments are a kind of thought. So that's a pretty good thing to think about, that these guys don't care. So yeah, that, I think, let's see, is there anything else? The storks kind of treat them differently, even though each of these are pretty indistinguishable from one another. The storks have an idea of which ones they like the most and which ones they just kick around. Maybe they'll give like a piggyback ride to one of them. Maybe they won't. Who knows? They just kind of do what they want to do, you know? And yeah, that's my world.
Love it.
Cool.
You know, I was hearing those Taoist influences and all those books you've read over the years just come out into this one piece of art.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about how those little light bulb dudes kind of sound like a mix between Megamind and penguins, honestly. It sounds very entertaining.
You're not wrong.
Very lovely to meet, except for you wouldn't really be able to, communicate with them very well because, you have thoughts and things.
Right.
Actions, so. Yeah.
I love it. My mental image is kind of like very simplistic colors. Like you got blue for the little light bulb dudes.
Mm-hmm.
The stork is just mostly just red, sort of like almost like colored in, like a filled in with like marker or crayon sort of art style. Is what I'm picturing. And just like a green globe, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting mental image.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you, Christian.
Well, thank you for letting me entertain you. Audra, I believe you would be next. So, what is your world?
So my world is a world where... let me give a little background. So, you know how, in everyday life, here on Earth, in the universe that we exist in currently, there are so many unwritten rules, like, hold the door open for someone when they're walking close behind you to go into a space. That's one example. Another common one is to, when you're visiting someone's house, like taking your shoes off most of the time, not all the time. That's the thing. it's unwritten. In this world, all of those kinds of unwritten rules are written down. So there's this one giant book that has all of the rules, like all of the unwritten rules everywhere, and everyone has their own personal unwritten rule book. It's written, but it's unwritten at the same time. And that expands, your own personal book expands as you get older. So like there are the general like society ones, that one giant book that's like kind of a reference table, and you just kind of, as you grow up, you just kind of memorize it. It just kind of becomes a daily part of your actions and your life. You just know it. But like the older you are, the larger of a personal book you have and stuff. So to respect someone, when they have a very large, written rule book. Or not, it's not even rule. Well, yeah, it is. I already said that. They've lived a lot. They've had a lot of experience. They've had time to gather these. So it's customary when you go to someone else's house to read through that book, especially if it's the first time visiting. If you're a friend, you don't need to do it, but like it's nice to do it every once in a while. It kind of shows some appreciation. Like, if you did something nice for a friend, like you got them a meal or something, it's kind of that equivalent in this world. And there's some other aspect of this I was going to mention. Yeah, it's here in the U.S. that would be very strange. That would be a very strange thing to do in our world, but it's completely normal there. Like we would feel so constrained having all these rules and all these things we felt like we had to follow. But the people of this world, that's their culture, that's their lifestyle. They live it. They have like a section of their brain solely dedicated to storing that information and, making sure that they have their personal rules. Like, their personal rules are also memorized as well as like, the giant book, and having others known as well. So it's like you have to have a whole section of your brain dedicated to it specifically.
Wow.
And I'd say that's my world.
Wow.
Dang. Sounds like a really big investment to get to know somebody in that world. Like you meet somebody in class and it's like, do I have 20 hours a week to meet another person right now?
I'm curious, in this world, is there some sort of like, they want to acquire more? Is there a goal or does it just happen?
I'd say kind of is a just happened thing. And like Stephen, what you were saying about, dang, do I have 20 hours a week to get to know this person? One, their schedules are a lot more relaxed than ours in our rushed workaholic culture we live in. It's a lot more relaxed. There is a lot of emphasis on like that's kind of how you respect someone by like, getting to know their unwritten rules. So like you're really only going to do that, if you enter someone's home. They can tell you their unwritten rules. Like you don't have to know them per se. It's not customary to know them, like unless you're specifically going to like their house or their place of dwelling or whatever. Christian, what you were saying about the acquiring, I would say like how when we're babies we have like certain developmental milestones and things like that. They're kind of those like in the first few years of these beings' life. They're not humans. Haven't really fully given thought to specifically what they look like and all that. But like they have a few certain milestones. How many unwritten rules they've started to acquire at a certain age and things like that. And then it kind of becomes a given. Like you know how to read after a certain amount of time, for example. Like you have a certain amount of vocabulary you can use, and you'll always learn more, but you have a set amount.
Now I'm curious because I want to know. I want to know about the person who has the least written rules.
Oh gosh, what do you mean by that exactly?
Like what is this person like looked down upon because he's got like, I don't know, how many rules does the person who has the least written rules have?
Oh, who actually has them or who knows them?
Who has them? In their book, it's just like a couple. I don't know. Is it a page? Is it like 5 pages?
Yeah. Their book sizes aren't the same as ours. Like they don't really translate into our understanding of exactly like what a book is or like a page or standard measurement for us. I'd say probably about I guess 10 of their units is a pretty respectable number. One probably has like 4 or 5 built up by like their teen years, and then it kind of acquires more slowly after that. The person who has the least amount of rules is kind of, you're kind of seen as weird a little bit. You know, it's
Makes sense.
it's kind of like, oh, okay, so you're not like the rest of us, kind of, but like not something where they would be like directly excluded. But I'm trying to think of a good analogy for it.
Wait, would that be an unwritten rule? Does that become a rule?
Yeah, it would. It would be.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it's not like it has to be like you don't get any less privileges or anything like that for being one of the people who's lower in that knowledge. And like there's a bunch of these people. Like it's not like, you know, how hard would it be for us to pick out the person in, I don't know, like our state or something, or like you know, I don't know, a county that we're in. It would be hard for us to pick out, you know, who has the least amount of knowledge on this one thing, for example. You know, that's kind of the way it is for them. But they also another facet of this is that their community on their planet is very close together, like distance-wise, basically. So we have all these highways and, you know, roads that take us, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, and tons of overlapping city roads and stuff like that. But it's a quiet kind of. It's a kind of transportation is easy, basically, because, you know, if you want to get to the giant reference book, and they've tried to make copies before, but the problem is that, you know, you just keep adding more on as they discover, as our society develops over time, that just more and more unwritten rules need to become written. So they just figured it's better to have like one giant book they can all reference than just try to spread it out, spread copies of it to everyone. And then you would have 2 rule books in your house, and like that would just be a lot. So yeah, that makes it easier for them to access that, and then also other people's rule books if they needed to for some reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Dang.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Do you have any more questions, or do you think?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Yeah, then. Steven, I have a question for you then. What's your world?
What a question.
I've never been asked that before, Audra.
Guess first time for everything then.
Yeah,
What is my world? It's a good question. What'd you say?
Nothing about amnesia. Absolutely not.
Okay. Nothing about amnesia. My world is a mess. It is just a total mess right now. A lot of things have happened recently. A little bit of background. In my world, they have planets. But the planets are not held together by gravity. Gravity doesn't exist in this world. The planets are held together by external pressure. So each planet is actually in an atmosphere. All of space is filled with a constant positive pressure that keeps planets squished together. People stay on these planets using, for a long time, it was just holding on to the grass on the ground, they're just floating along, dragging themselves along. Eventually, they got around to making like cleats that have hooks that allow them to walk around. At this point, they just have frickin' rocket boots. Again, my world has come a long way here. But that's not why it's a mess. The world was beautiful before.
It was?
Before the big pop.
Okay.
The big pop. It was gorgeous. Beautiful fields, further than the eye can see. Light travels differently on these places. The closer you get to one of these planets, light tends to bend around the planet much more than in our world. So as you get closer and closer to the planet, even though the planets are only about 1/100th the size of our planets, you can actually see the back of your head once you're standing on the surface, because the light just goes all the way around and hits the back of your head. So you could look out and just see an endless fractal of trees and grass and villages. And you could travel to the other side of the world in a fraction of the time that you can here. So there was culture, there was universal acceptance of different people, because you could just jump to another planet if you wanted. You know, there wasn't a huge difference, a huge distance differentiating people. And then the pop happened. They didn't know it, but inside one of the planets was hiding a nest.
A nest?
A nest.
Of what? I'm scared to ask.
Horrid entities. Things you wouldn't want to see. Things you wouldn't want to imagine.
Yeah.
They were biological, they think. As far as they could tell, they were. But nothing like them, certainly. Worked in entirely different ways. Ways that made their lives just pure mystery. In order to kill them, you had to reverse all logic of what life was. You had to feed them. You had to pet them. Occasionally that would kill them. And if they tried shooting them, they tried sawing them in half, split into two more, or it made them grow in size. None of it followed the logic you would expect. But that's just about the entities themselves. The big pop is the moment where the nest grew so large, it popped the planet it was hiding inside.
Ooh.
The entire planet imploded instantaneously because of the constant pressure in this universe. Everyone living on the surface, 1 second they were doing fine. Over the course of about an hour, they were hearing cracks and crumbles. The ground started shaking. There aren't earthquakes in this world. The planets have already stabilized long ago. So the ground starts to shake. Nobody has any idea what's happening. And then suddenly the ground is just gone from beneath them. Now, luckily, there isn't gravity here. So it doesn't mean they just fell into the center of the planet and was eaten by the horde that was just now right in front of their faces.
Thank goodness. Gosh.
But the people who didn't have jet boots, who were just using good old-fashioned hook sneakers, they weren't so lucky. The nest had been pressurizing the inside of the planet for centuries. And at that point, the pressure was immense. When the planet exploded, it's almost like a supernova. When a star implodes, it sinks in and then pops. The nest exploded hundreds of thousands of miles into the universe, hitting thousands of planets along the way. So within minutes, the world went from a peaceful, culturally diverse, beautiful place to an absolute war zone. They've been fighting for many years, fighting for survival, fighting to understand the enemy they're coming up against. But every step forward they take in understanding them and in attempting to regain the peace they had, they always end up taking 2 steps back in some way. Oftentimes, it's simply because of the nature of the entities. Every time they want to beat them, it almost appears like they adapt within days, and universally too. It's not just like with this population on this planet, they found a way to eradicate them. Well, within 3 days, if they haven't gotten rid of all of them on the planet, all of them on the planet have adapted to that.
And kind of like a hive mind, basically.
Like a hive mind. The rest of them on every other planet have also adapted.
Oh.
Wow.
So communication, fast communication on ways to eradicate these creatures has become key. So if they can come across a method of eradicating them quickly, if they can get that to the other planets fast enough, they can win. And at least they can cut down their population, at the very least.
Yeah.
They have actually found many ways of eradicating these creatures. In fact, they've wiped out populations off of planets before. But they have not succeeded in communicating with the others quick enough that it actually makes a difference in the long term. Soon enough, one of these creatures... Hello, kitty. Hello, kitty.
She's just...
She's upset. She's upset by this
Just
story.
said, I was going to say, that's what I was trying to say, yeah.
There you go.
They're not quick enough?
They're just not quick enough. It's a shame. It is. And their culture has adjusted to reflect all this. Kitty? What? Okay, fine. Okay. Their culture has adjusted to reflect this. They've developed near instantaneous communication. They've gotten as close as possible, and yet these creatures seem to just get slightly faster every time they advance. Every time they step forward, they're one step ahead. And it doesn't matter where they are. Their latest mission is to develop a theory of traveling through wormholes. They believe that this could be the key to saving. It's not just their species, even. It's just the purity of life itself. So it's an existential mission. It's a mission of existential proportions that they're on.
Yeah.
Wow,
that sounds extremely traumatizing. I mean, just imagine, it's crazy. How did you mentioned earlier that like one of the ways that people were figuring out the creatures as monsters, basically, like how to defeat them in some sense or to prohibit them from attacking was by being nice to them, like literally just like petting them and stuff like that. So was that? So it doesn't sound like that was like fully successful, or
so here's the thing:
one of their theories or something, basically.
Some of the methods of eradicating the population were to feed them en masse, for instance.
Oh.
Essentially, their efforts. Please scoot, thank you. Their efforts of assisting the population's growth often results in their population being eradicated. But the problem is that in any way you can think of being kind to these creatures, first off, no one wants to do that.
Well, of course not. No, I mean...
And faking it is very hard and doesn't work.
Okay.
So you need to, at least on some level of your soul, genuinely care for these creatures.
Wow.
Which makes it very difficult to do anything.
What a task.
Yeah, but also, you have to do it fast enough. And taking care of things is not a fast process. So it is a mad dash to... It's been stretching the limits of philosophy in terms of what it means to care for creatures. Literally, these questions are of utmost importance for this universe.
Yeah.
Their ideas of what love means have just virally spread throughout, almost like a meme, changing slightly between every planet. Just almost like natural selection trying to find a theory that can assist them in their battle. So in a way, it's actually seriously expanded their philosophical and cultural affect, their thoughts, their theories. Unfortunately, though, that in itself is there's something to be said about that. It has come at great cost.
Is there hope, Stephen?
That's the real question.
This universe, there almost seems to be a battle against hope itself. All the aspects of your normal story, of your hero's journey, of your apocalypse story, they've been turned on their heads because the method of saving themselves is to discover a way in which they can alter their minds enough to love their enemies enough to destroy them. You can imagine that's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah.
So in terms of hope, they have hope. They're on the brink of inventing wormholes in order to get instant communication between planets. They are on the edge of philosophical breakthroughs that could allow them to eradicate every creature on the planet at the same time. Until they get to that point, though, until they can until they can enlighten themselves in these ways enough, they're stuck in a constant battle, in a losing battle.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, kind of the framing and like how, of what you were saying about how it seems to kind of like a losing battle, like before, like just so everything you were saying is kind of what it's communicating. And at first I was like, so like, are you just kind of, from what I could tell from like your position to this world, Stephen, you do seem attached to it. You know, you're attached to this mission that they're fighting for, to keep their philosophy and their existence alive and everything. Because for a little bit I was thinking, like, okay, this is kind of, it's sad, but it's like, a natural selection thing, survival of the fittest, all that kind of stuff. It's just another, thing of passing of time where another creature, another race, becomes, the top one, or like, the thing that takes over, and then there'll be that kind of thing in the future. But no, this has meaning because of their philosophy and how much they've grown through this whole experience. So yeah,
exactly.
I can completely see that now.
It's more than anything a battle of meaning.
Yeah.
And a battle of thoughts. These creatures, it's not just a better creature, a creature better able to survive has appeared. It's that they're an antithesis to life and natural processes as we know it. And our concept of emotion and love itself. They're backwards in every way. Loving them kills them. Hating them makes them grow. And it seems like their only mission is to kill off hope and kill off the cultural and flourishing of these people.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's really deep. It's crazy.
No,
and again, our call ends in 10 minutes. Have we already been... What is this?
We've been here for 2 hours.
Really?
Almost.
Have we actually?
The recording has been going for an hour and 30. We've been live for an hour 48.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well then.
Well then.
That's my world.
That was an experience.
It sure
It took me on a journey.
It did. Maybe not a hero's journey, but a journey all the same.
Yeah. I'm glad you could be brought into the mental, emotional challenges that these people are facing. Do you ever do world updates for things like that? We haven't. I mean, I didn't think so from what I've seen previously, but like Stevens, the people they're battling to keep their culture alive, and their whole race. So like, that's an ongoing thing. I mean, it's possible that it's kind of like maybe it's in a time loop and it's never resolved or something. But if there's any possibility of it being resolved, like, would you ever consider providing an update about it? I mean, I feel like I'm pretty. I have a stake in this now, kind of.
Oh, I see. We need a part 2.
That makes sense.
I feel you. If I hear back from my source again,
okay.
I haven't heard from him in a little while. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's got a lot going on, I'm sure. He's got a lot going on. It's been a while since the last update. Kind of worried, but holding on to hope every day that he comes back and lets me know, gives me an update. So, but when I know, you know. Yep. Cool.
When they know, you'll know, you know?
You know?
Sure do know.
I know.
Famous quote.
You know?
We know.
We know.
It's really Comic Sans.
Oh, they do know.
Unless you don't want to bring Comic Sans into it, but...
I mean, you can't deny it.
It's fine. They do know. Yeah. And they probably know on another level.
There's some things they don't know.
What we get.
But we don't always talk about those things. We talk about all the things that they know. They know everything we know. They know everything we've ever said. There's not a single thing that we've hidden from them, clearly.
That's very true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just give me 1 second here.
Yep.
Okay. I've slipped into the alternate reality. Let's just want everyone to know out there, if you do see Comic Sans out in the wild, be very careful. there are some mimetic effects that you need to be careful about. Don't read too much of it. Try to get in a different font if you can. If the writing kind of suddenly changes topics into things that kind of make you uncomfortable, exit out, get away from your computer, leave the house immediately. Drive at least 10 miles away for a good 20 minutes. After that, you should be fine to come back. So just a little PSA about all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I've been uninitiated. I mean, I've watched your podcast, but like Comic Sans, just you don't talk about it as a very casual conversation topic, From what I've gathered, you treat it very seriously.
They're anything but casual, for sure.
Oh yeah.
You can't be casual with them. They do give off the air of casual, of levity, but you got to be careful. You got to be careful. I mean, it's just like any other sponsor, right? You got to be careful with what you say with your sponsored segments. But this is of existential magnitude.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
So
they want you to think it's casual, which is the problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's hard because, then you kind of get into the mindset of, oh, we're casual, we're buddies, we're friends. But that's just not the reality. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, you just remember, that giant piece of paper that you sign your name on and happen to have your life also on it.
That too.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
There's,
It was really obvious too. Like I could literally see my entire life on the paper.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it.
Did that happen because you two are like Steven, you're a co-host basically. Like, is that because you guys run this? Like, was that because you run the podcast? Because I didn't get any notices about that, but that could just be today.
Right,
I don't know.
As a guest,
they just haven't approached me yet, maybe, or something.
Right.
If they approach you, it sounds crazy, but you might actually want to wear a tinfoil hat. That can be helpful in countering mimetic effects. If they approach you, do not look them in the eye. That's step number one. And never use your own name. If they ask you what is that? Right. So if they ask you what your name is, just go, come on, you came to me, But anything you can do, just don't say your own name.
Yeah. We try our best as the hosts of this podcast to have our agents go out there and protect all of our guests.
Got it.
They do only such a good job, though, because Comic Sans is, Comic Sans. So they have their methods. But we try our best.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of sub-dimensions they can slip through.
Yeah.
We're plugging them all the time, but it's a constant battle, It's like whether we win or lose, it's up to the fates.
How did they get to be the magnitude they are? Was it just kind of like a behind the scenes slow kind of growth, or what? Because that just seems kind of crazy. That wasn't a thing people talked about a while ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. Explain it.
I mean, they were basically the Google of the dimension. You can imagine. Google's motto is don't be evil. Haha.
So did they form after Google? Were they modeling themselves after Google? Or
no. They're from a different dimension. They're from a different dimension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's kind of happenstance a little bit. The dimension they were in had a ton of transdimensional gates. It was just jam packed. So it was really, really easy for them to develop interdimensional travel, which allowed them to become one of the first in that meta timeline's transdimensional, but one of the first transdimensional companies in that meta timeline.
Okay.
Across the metaverse, yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So they basically got their foot in the door, and they took every possible advantage of it.
Oh yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I blame them necessarily, but at this point, they're a lot to deal with, and they're ubiquitous. Within almost every dimension, there is a Comic Sans ambassador's office, who you have to meet with when you were born.
Okay.
Right, that's when they wipe your memory, right?
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, I think so.
Oh, okay.
That's the
Wait.
theory.
Oh.
I mean, nobody knows. That's the thing.
I was gonna say no, but yeah.
Bing, bing,
That was
bong.
Comic Sans.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
we've got
really?
a call with them.
Okay.
Steve and I have
Okay.
gotta get some business to take care of.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
we send them the? Did we write up our tax forms for their sponsorship?
For
this
which
one.
dimension,
Oh,
man?
did you do the form that that let me be on the podcast for this episode? I remember signing.
No, didn't you
it.
write that, Christian? I think you sent that in.
Whoop.
Right?
I think that they're,
Oh my
they're
gosh! Wait,
contacting
are
us
they
already.
are they
Oh.
contacting us? Oh god!
Oh
my gosh!
goodness!
Oh my gosh! Hey, how's it going? You know, how did you get through that into here? That's fine. That's totally fine. You're allowed in here, obviously.
Does that happen regularly?
Yeah, they come in and they check on us. They check on us. They
supposed to be able to get into our dimension.
they check on us no matter where we are.
Who's in charge of that?
They make sure that we are safe and sound. Hey man, how's it going? Look, I appreciate the concern. Yes, tax forms are on their way. They are in the mail, right?
Yes.
Christian, they're
For
in the
Dimension
mail.
52?
Dimension
in my form as well. My
Yours form.
Yes.
So we are set. Paperwork is set.
The call's about to end.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Listen,
Gosh.
Comic Sans, we're set here. Okay, you're gonna get it soon. 52
you can see it ticking down. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
gosh. Oh no.
The
It's
podcast
over.
is over.
Wait.
Comic Sans is taking over.
Don't do it.
Thank you for
Don't do
coming.
it.